We know him simply as Sensei Ford, but to others he is known as husband, father, brother, and band leader. Sensei KERMIT Ford was a black belt karate expert, a musician, a drill sergeant, and a band leader. He formed the National Bahamian Karate Federation back in the early 70s. He also founded the Pioneer Drum and Bugle Corps. A 1971 report of the martial arts world in the Black Belt Times said that KERMIT Ford was the founder of karate in the Bahamas and the director of youth services in the Department of Welfare of the Bahamian government. Ford was born in the Bahamas but lived in the U.S. for 17 years, during which time he served in the Army and studied music at the New York School of Music for 7 years. In 1962, KERMIT topped off his education by studying karate under Moses Powell and New York martial artists. By 1967, he had risen to black belt. That was the year he, like many other Bahamians, heeded the plea of the newly elected Prime Minister asking the expatriates to return and help the country. As the first karate instructor in the Bahamas, he opened his own dojo and saw karate catch on in a big way. He was diverse in his skills and talents, with karate and music at the forefront. In an interview with his son, Amanra Ford, we found out that KERMIT Ford was born in Nassau, Bahamas on March 20th, 1937. He grew up in the area of Lifeboy Street near the historic Collins Wall. His mother was Elizabeth LaRoda of Acklands, and his dad was Herman Ford. They were both musicians. His mother played the keyboard in church and taught piano to the neighborhood children. His father was an instrumentalist. He played the piano, the violin, the guitar, and tuned piano. Amanra continued that after high school, KERMIT Ford went to plumbing trade school, and he also participated in the Church of God marching band at a very early age. He used his plumbing trade to help support his family. One of the many stories that KERMIT Ford told his son Amanra was that he, KERMIT, would make just a few shillings for a week's work. He would give his entire salary to his mother, which many young men did back in those days. His mother would give him back a few pennies and he would buy a sweet loaf from the bread shop and a soda. He would go to the park and share the loaf and soda with his friends. During his early days, KERMIT spent a lot of time with his dad, who was one of the few Negroes in Nassau who owned his own motor vehicle. He was a piano tuner who worked in Lyford Key and other resort properties and made a good living. Later in his youth, KERMIT's circumstances changed his ability to be close to his dad. As a result, he made a commitment to see that he impacted in a positive way every young person that he came in contact with. He had a number of children of his own and treated them all equally. His equal treatment of children also included children who were not his biologically. Amanra said that no child that he ever came across who was in need did he not do for. KERMIT eventually left Nassau as a youth and went to the U.S. to live with his mom, who had moved there. He was still very young, but he worked and made money using his musical skills. New York was quite a place to live in the 1940s and early 50s. He would go to school in the day and work in the night. When he became 16 or 17, he was drafted to the Army, where he served in Korea. While in the U.S., he became a member of a Pan-African group called the Panthers, and that is where a lot of his military training was made use of, and that's also where he started mentoring young black men and using the marching band to drive some of those life lessons home. Things were changing in the Bahamas because of the absentee fathers after the contract. A lot of men bred and left. In order to get youngsters in line, KERMIT would round up the youth who were free and on the streets and mentor them, teaching them to drill and become a part of society. He performed at the independence celebration of the Bahamas and even met with Prince Charles. He created marching bands at many of the high schools. He was eventually asked to volunteer to go to various schools and set up drill teams and marching bands. After the pioneers was the Cadet Corps. He had a strong sense of self-esteem and black pride. All of his children were named after prominent Africans. The response of his son Emmanuel Ford when asked, "What would Kermit think of the Bahamas today?" Emmanuel said that a lot of what we are suffering today was predicted by his father. Too many unwed parents who are literally children, parents that don't practice our grandmother's rearing. He would be more than disappointed at the social ills that are all too prevalent. Father absenteeism and mother's inability to discipline with the strength needed to bend the branch while it is still young. His biggest contribution, Emmanuel said, is that a significant amount of the professional class, a large majority of men and women, could trace some of their success to Kermit Ford's contribution. He was diverse in his talents. He became strong in the church and a born-again Christian when he died in his early 70s. Sensei Ford was known and loved by many. A Facebook post inquiring about him brought forth many testimonies. Angelos Rose said that he was a pioneer way ahead of his time. Sidney Hunter said that Mr. Ford was founder and band director of the Pioneers Drum and Bugle Corps. I had the privilege of being a member of the Pioneers. We traveled throughout the Bahamas and the United States performing. The Light Walker said he was my drill team leader at R.M. Bailey. He trained me to be a leader. He became a second father to me, a man of many talents and no nonsense. Jeffrey R. Davis said that Mr. Ford was also a master musician sax player. We taught together at the Simpson Penn School for Juvenile Youth. He was a man of strong character and he motivated a nation to be disciplined. He was a master of teaching band music, drilling, and cultural awareness. He started all of his classes with a prayer. Mr. Ford was a generational thinker and visionary. He was loved by many young people. He has a rough voice and a gentle heart. I learned a lot from him. My wife Elizabeth was one of the first female students to be trained by Mr. Ford. He produced champions in martial artists. Jeffrey R. Davis said that he knew my family just by looking at me. When I played the trumpet, he said, "Who's your people? Use anything to Lou?" That was it. We talked for about 2 hours. He was a man full of knowledge like an encyclopedia. R.M.E. Ford said that he was the founder of Drum and Bugle, my favorite Bahamas marching band in the 70s. Paige Moss Gray said, "The Drum and Bugle Corps growing up in Nassau, I loved watching Mr. Ford marching band." Elizabeth Davis said, "In 1969, I was the only female attending Mr. Ford's martial art classes at Bethel Baptist Church Auditorium located on West Hill Street, Nassau. I participated in many exhibitions throughout Nassau displaying our karate skills. Mr. Ford was a matter-of-fact person who wanted all of his students to excel to the highest level, and it did not matter that I was a female. My regiment seemed harsher because he felt that I must be prepared for the inevitable. I received many belts under his training and ended as a purple belt. Rest in peace, Mr. Ford. He was a great icon in the Bahamas." Michian Arnstein said he helped to form the government's Cadet Corps Band, which was referred to lovingly as Ford Band. The band had drill units from all over, and whenever we hit the streets, people would yell, "Look a Pinland Army!" Young, gifted, and black. Bridget Cooper said yes, he taught music at A.F. Adley Senior High School in the 80s. He had a cool bop when he walked. Donnie Mott said he taught Frankie Adderley, who was also a black belt, and rented a house from my Grammy. Joel Campbell said I was a student of Gus Cartwright, but we always respected Mr. Ford as the godfather of karate in the Bahamas. Rest in peace. Agnes Rose contributed, "He was my band teacher at A.F. Adderley High School in the 80s. Jawara Adams said, "I got to meet him in the mid-90s by just offering him a ride to Wolf Road when it started to rain. He had white hair, dark skin, ended up talking for 2 hours. I was very happy to have met him. Sometimes you can tell when somebody is great just by their spirit alone." In a letter to the editor back in August of 2011, Derek Roker wrote, "Sometime during the late 1960s, Dame Doris Johnson was able to convince the powers within the Progressive Liberal Party government to sponsor a project that was headed by Kermit Ford, which caused the Pioneer Drum and Bugle Corps to be formed. This was the largest marching band ever to be in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The grouping had many sections. There was teaching, discipline, art, culture, and the developing of minds, including giving the participants a sense of pride. This was one of the most successful and organized youth movements in the history of these Bahama Islands. The sons and daughters of the inner city were beginning to see through the crust of oppression. Their human insight into music, dance, and art displayed a way of life which would have shown one how to have compassion. Had this group been allowed to continue and accomplish the ideals it sought to, I feel it would have been a part of the solution the leaders of today are seeking for many of the current social ills." In this edition of Bahamian Heritage Series, we salute Sensei Kermit Ford, father of martial arts in the Bahamas and founder and band director of the Pioneers Drum and Bugle Corps, a man whose legacy will never be forgotten.